The following program is intended for mature audiences.
The following program contains strong language. It is intended only for mature audiences.
This is a previously recorded episode of the IT in the D Show.
IT in the D. Networking Detroit, one beer at a time.
ITintheD.com.
All right, hey, coming back from a break. This is a one-off episode of the IT in the D Show. I don't know what we're going to call it or how we're going to title it. It is what it is. So I know we left. Calvin, we were going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Talking historical perspectives. The first hour was a phenomenal conversation. So kind of looking forward to this next segment and where we're going to go there.
Yeah. So again, my background is in history and in Christian ministry, and so one of the things I didn't get to hit on in the last segment was some of the spiritual arguments that were given for slavery by pro-slavery advocates, and how
it was many.
Yeah, it was many, and how these are holdovers in the ideas that people hold to this day, which affects Black people in a bad way. So we've all heard of the movie Amistad. You know, the big slave revolt free on the ship, right? Yeah, give us free. Give us free. Kali was the main character in that movie, right? Yes. So we actually have his diaries, but he actually wrote a letter to John Quincy Adams, who was president of the United States at the time of that slave revolt. And one of the arguments was that Black people have no souls. That was one of the arguments about Black people. This is why we need to enslave them, because they don't have any souls. Right?
Well, carried forward in The Godfather.
It's been a long time since I've seen The Godfather.
They're animals anyway, so let them lose their souls.
Gotcha. True story.
Yes.
So the thing was, people were taking, slave owners were taking their slaves to church. Make them sit up in the upper level. You may have seen this in a lot of movies where the Black people sit up high and the white people sit down on the floor. And the idea, though, was that some people held to the idea that Black people have no souls. And Black people were like, why? If we don't have any souls, you guys are talking about souls a lot in this meeting. Why are we here? Right. Why did you bring us here? And the idea of slave masters was just in case we're wrong and they do have souls, we know we're wrong for doing what we're doing to them, but we want to make sure they're Christians.
On that same point, I'm a as they say, like, tag team you in for like 2 seconds. And say that's why a lot of the plantations.
And you're Marty Jannetty.
Got you.
Just as long as we're clear on that.
Got you.
I'm Shawn Michaels. Sweet chin music. Your career over.
I would say more so the pedigree, the game of Hunter Hill Samson. But that would be who I would want to be.
I'm Triple H, and you're China. Is that where we go with that?
You're being an old person right now. There are new wrestlers.
Sorry.
But make sure you're not being an old person right now.
Pour one out for China.
But that's another. I know. Let's pour out a little liquor.
Yeah.
But that's another reason why most plantations you have the big house, or like the quarters for the massa, quote unquote, and then the church at the end of the quarters of the plantation, because it's almost like if you run away, you're running away from
God.
Exactly.
You're running away from God. You're running away from everything that you know is right. So that's a very good point. Kale, who was the leader of the slave revolt, on the slave ship Amistad, said this: "Some people say Mendi people got no souls. Why we feel bad we got no souls. Mendi have got souls. We think we know God punish us if we tell lie. We never tell lie. We speak the truth. What for Mendi people afraid? Because they got souls." So he's feeling bad because they just killed all these people on this ship, right? Hey, you know what? You're going to enslave us. We don't want to be enslaved. You're killing us. We're killing you back, but we still feel bad about that. Why do we feel bad about that? Because we have souls. If we didn't have souls, we'd just be like, well,
turn the boat around.
Turn the boat around. Let's row back home, right? But they felt bad about this, and that's what he's writing to John Quincy Adams at the time. Like, look, we have souls. We feel bad about these things. We are not animals. We are not people or things to be owned or property to be transported. We actually have souls. But there was this idea that, Black people don't have souls. And that's one of these holdovers. I don't think many people hold to the idea that Black people have no souls, but it does feed into the idea that Black people are indiscriminately violent because of Amistad. We're all like, man, they killed a bunch of people on that ship, but if I was enslaved, I'd do the same thing, right? I'd do the same thing. But this holdover is kind of this hypocrisy. Like, I'd kill someone if they were trying to enslave me. But now it's a holdover of, black people are violent. They do these kinds of things.
They're prone to revenge.
We have people who are shooting. They're shooting. Well, we have cops who are shooting black people right now, right?
But the other historical point you got to really factor in also is that at this point in the idea of America, black people weren't recognized as full human beings at the time either.
Right, you got that three-fifths compromise.
That all men are created equal. Decision. Well, as long as you're talking about white rich, land-owning
males. That was it.
Well,
which is also the church.
But even then, though,
that's also the church. Though, let's be real. I mean, you've got the Councils of Trent that went on to basically edit stories, which ones get included in the Bible or not, because, it helps fit the story.
We have a whole podcast about why you're wrong on that. We have a whole podcast, so that's a big area for me.
Even then, depending upon if you're quote-unquote white, the European nation you're from, you still weren't necessarily considered a full human being.
Correct. Yeah, you had indentured servants.
No Irish need apply. You've got
all those things.
Yes.
They got rights way faster.
Again,
I mean,
because I'm convinced the other 2/5 that they thought black people were raging beasts.
Yeah, but the thing is, you still have Jefferson Davis saying that we have equality in the South, but you didn't have the equality that he was talking about, right? You actually had indentured servants. You had white people who were seen as less than.
Yeah,
but the moral argument he was making was, hey.
You had white enslaved people also on plantations that a lot of people don't talk about. I mean, it depended upon, and like I say, it's the whole idea of, like we say, this is a culture, this is a social construct. So I mean, we've created what race is. So white is an idea of we've created this whole thing of white, quote unquote. So if you were white and you said, hey, I'm here in America, but guess what? I'm Polish. It's like, guess what? You're 3/5 a human being.
Right.
And then it's like, you know what? I'm a second generation Polish person. So fuck that. I'm white. I'm not Polish. Guess what? You're a full human being. So it's a lot of thought process. And then even to another point about church, and as we talk about the whole idea, also another thing that assimilated a lot of us, and I'm Christian too, in the sense of I fall under Christian values and everything, but another the arguments that many people will make, and it's so funny, on Cinemax they were playing Malcolm X today. I'm surprised. But
you shouldn't be.
Probably shouldn't have been doing all that.
Good Lord.
As I was
they
watching
really want this race war, boy, I tell you.
As I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, another
Denzel should have gotten an Oscar for that.
I was thinking that as well. But along with
Poor
that,
Denzel, man.
I know, man. He's gotten two
got one for Training Day.
Two mentions.
Let's
today.
go on record to say that Denzel.
Yeah, as a drug dealer, he gets the
as a dirty cop.
You just bought into the propaganda.
I would like to go on record and say that Denzel is not an actor. Denzel Washington is literally just Denzel in different situations.
True story.
That man has never changed.
You can say that about Kevin Hart, Samuel L. Jackson.
Wait, so he's the black Adam Sandler?
Every time.
Jeff Goldblum.
It's always like, what if Denzel Washington had to deliver the Bible with demons?
In Philadelphia, he was
blind the whole time. What if Denzel Washington
just ruin that for anybody?
What if Philadelphia in the Bone Collector? If you're listening, Denzel, I thought I did not think it was
Denzel
you.
Washington's son needed a heart transplant.
Anyhow, okay. So let's get this back on the rails here.
Okay.
So they have no souls. Slavery provides for the Christianizing of the Negro.
Yes.
But then one of the big ones was God has ordained and not prohibited slavery. Okay, so one of the arguments was Jesus never said anything about slavery. And he's right. He's not. He hasn't said anything about slavery. Jesus never once says anything about slavery. The problem with the argument is what Christians believe theologically. So let me lay this out for you so people understand what Christians believe. One, Christians believe that there is a God. Mm-hmm. God in three persons. There's a Trinity. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Go. If you don't believe it, that's fine. I'm just telling you what Christians believe, theologically. So, they believe that. They believe that the Bible is the Word of God. Okay, so that God did not override the personalities of the people that were writing this. It's written by 40 different people from Lots of different walks of life on 3 different continents over 1,500 years with one overarching story, the redemption of mankind. That is the entire story. Beginning to end, Genesis to Revelation. That is the story.
It's Star Wars.
Okay, I know, right? Don't think that pop culture has not borrowed heavily from this book, right?
And the Matrix. And
All right,
Matrix.
yeah, the Matrix definitely borrowed. I was like, you just
That wasn't
ransacked
a borrowing.
this.
That was a reason.
Yeah, just straight up. I mean, when Superman and Superman return, back to the Earth, like, okay,
Bro, that was
the whole cross
we
thing,
call
right?
that a retcon.
Okay,
like that.
So pop culture has mined the scriptures for years. Okay,
About the Richard
so
Pryor
we
version.
believe that the Bible is the Word of God. Okay, that he didn't override personalities, but he used their personalities in space, in time, to write down God's words in the original language in perfect fidelity, written in 3 different languages: Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic. Okay, these are things that Christians believe. We also believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Okay, Buddha comes along and says, "I'm not God." Krishna comes along and says, "I'm not God." Muhammad comes along and says, "I'm not God." Jesus says, "I'm God." That's a huge deal. That's why they killed him. That's why this guy is saying that he's God. We need to kill him. That's blasphemy. That's
tripping.
why Jesus was killed. All right? So you've got Jesus as the Son of God. If you believe that Jesus is God, and you believe that the Bible is God's word, and the Bible talks very clearly about slavery being wrong, and God always characterizes himself as, "I'm the one who brought you up out of Egypt, out of slavery from Pharaoh." And in the New Testament, when Paul, who wrote 3/4 of the New Testament, says, hey, these people don't get to go to heaven. One of them on the list, enslavers. People who buy, sell, and trade people don't get to go to heaven, right? They have no place in the kingdom of God. These are the things that Christians believe, okay? So I need to say that because when people say, well, Jesus never prohibited slavery. Do you believe Jesus is God? Yes. Do you believe the Bible is God's word? Yes. God says he's against slavery, and if you believe Jesus is God, then Jesus spoke about slavery. And he says it's not a good thing. And he's always about liberation. That's the entire story of Scripture. So I want to put on blast.
Liberation.
See?
He's about that life.
He's totally about liberation. So the Old Testament is liberating you from physical slavery. New Testament, liberating you from spiritual slavery. But there's actually a point in the New Testament where Paul writes to a guy named Onesimus. Okay, and his slave Philemon has run away from him. Right? And he writes to Onesimus and he says, hey, look, Philemon's he's shown up here, and just so you know, he's now become a Christian, and I want to send him back to you because Paul wrote, look, if you're a slave, don't try to run away. But if you can get your freedom, get it. But if you aren't going to get your freedom, stay in the situation that you're in so that you can provide a good example of Christ so that maybe, just maybe, your slave master will be saved as well. Right? But he writes to the guy saying, but just so you know, as a Christian, I could tell you to immediately free this person. It is wrong what you were involved in, but because of the culture, he didn't make him do that. And there's lots of commentary on this kind of thing, and I won't go into all of it. But the overarching story of all of Scripture is slavery is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. So anybody who says that, oh, well, the Bible was used to keep people enslaved. No, what was actually used to keep people enslaved was not letting people read. Because once they read it, they'd be like, well, hey, wait a minute. I said you don't get to go to heaven.
So,
all right, hold on. So you did. Hold on. I just want to clarify a couple of things because we're going back earlier. So you did your white man voice interpretation.
I did do the white man voice. Again, I apologize.
Well, and that was
incredulous.
That was in confused Negroes.
That was Calvin just smelled his first smell of marijuana in the stairwell.
Oh, going back to episode 150. Right. Going back to 150.
Zabba.
Back.
Wanted to make sure that wasn't your Denzel impression.
It was not my Denzel.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Thomas Jefferson isn't in heaven for you.
Well, no.
Hell no.
No. Have you ever heard of the Thomas Jefferson Bible? Okay, so
he's not even a Christian.
Jefferson was not a Christian. He takes the Bible and he takes all the miracles of Jesus out. He cut them all out. That's what we have called as the Jefferson Bible. So it's the Bible without all the miracles of Jesus. He's completely naturalist. No, I don't think that he was a Christian, because if you don't believe in the miracles of Jesus, if you don't believe the story,
most of the founding fathers were not Christian. It's a common misconception that this is like the world's most Christian nation,
right?
Because they were escaping from a lot of Christian oppression. And so there are all of these things that, I mean, once again, back to marketing, back to conditioning.
Hold on, one sec.
Back to you.
One sec.
Back to you, Dan.
Okay. The last point I was trying to make off of that, okay, how this is a holdover, okay? So God's ordained and not prohibited slavery. So I've just shown that is unequivocally incorrect. Okay.
So Old Testament, just to clarify, I'm not even a tenth or a millionth of educated as you are on this, but Old Testament has mentioned, and that's not the word of. I'm just complete as.
No, the Old Testament's a word of God.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, educate me as a dumb.
Old Testament, New
dumb.
Testament.
Wasn't there passages that you could sell your daughter or something like that to a neighboring country or blah blah blah?
Yeah, there was absolutely all of those kinds of things. Those things. Oh, gosh, I have to get into ancient name.
Hey, sometimes you need farmland.
I want to talk about that offline, but
please,
to give you a very quick answer, anytime you see anything that is defined as law, hey, you can sell this, you can do this, and it involves people in the Old Testament, it is held over and against the cultures that were surrounding them. Okay? So in one culture, it's like, hey, you know what? You can sell this person over to this person, all right? But it was over and against this culture right next to them that when they conquered, they just murdered and killed and raped. Okay, so it's like very, very different. And so people would look at the Hebrew people, and we're talking about Jewish people at this point, they would look at them and go, you're being really lax in your law by just selling them all. You should totally murder those people because that's what it means to totally conquer.
Okay.
So it was over and against the cultures around them. That's what that was about.
Let me get this point, too, because, and boy, I got into some great debates with my white black history teacher about this, but historically...
Nothing wrong with a black white history teacher if they know this stuff.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with
Unless
that.
they're claiming to be black Rachel Dolezal.
Hey, I ain't have nothing wrong with
she was
Rachel.
more down for the cause than had the cause I meant.
She self-identifies.
When I get pulled over, I identify as a white woman.
Yeah,
Or Sean King.
I self-identify.
I am a white woman.
Or
I
Sean
self-identify
King.
as sober.
Yeah.
I got a text message from like 7 people that started from Sean King today.
Okay.
But
Sean King real.
So another thing that we got to think about historically, because I definitely don't know as much about the Bible, but historically, as people say all the time, black people participated in the slave trade as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, but historically, slave trading was never as gruesome and as horrific as what happened with the transatlantic slave trade before. Because even in African slave trading, the whole idea was the premise of you go to battle with another tribe, you lose, and then you become enslaved.
Right.
You be enslaved, but if you were a drum maker in that tribe, now you're a drum maker in this tribe. If you were a farmer in this tribe, you'd be a farm maker in that tribe. The only slavery that was cross-generational, even in Egyptian slavery, as people say, even Hebrew slavery, was the transatlantic slave trade. So meaning that, yes, your father was a slave because he was a warrior that lost a battle, and then he'd be a slave. But now, guess what? You were Cushite. Well, you were Cushite, and now you're Maasai. You're going to be born into being Maasai, but you could go back to Cushite, or you could go back to an Ashanti, or you should go back to another tribe. Slavery has never been as gruesome. Another point that you have to like really bring out, because it's like slavery. When you talk about the whole, like, I guess, like, you paint with the broad brush of black people included themselves in the slave trade as well. The premise of it was completely different because the idea was, oh, this slavery will be just like
our slavery. Right.
But it was nothing like it. It was never generational until the transatlantic slave trade, meaning that you be born into slavery as well, and you would be bred into slavery as well, and you also wouldn't have a choice into what you do. So if you're a drum maker, you're not going to be a drum maker in the Caribbean, which was actually the Caribbean islands and the South American islands. I think were even more gruesome than the North American islands of enslavement. But you know, you didn't have that because especially that sugar processing, they work people to death.
Yeah, they were in the water too.
So the thought process, I think you always have to bring that up when you talk about enslavement. And
people have different definitions. There were different definitions of what enslavement looked like.
Exactly.
The point that I wanted to make, that's the holdover, and it's the last thing I'm going to say on this in terms of history, at least the presentation I had, this idea of God ordination. Okay, so I've shown that was incorrect. They were making an incorrect argument. But this is a holdover for people when it comes to a lot of conservative thought. And again, I'm speaking to my own tribe, come from a very conservative background. I believe in some conservative ideals. I believe in some liberal ideals. This is how being a moderate works.
You stomping Trump?
No. How dare you?
He just said there were lines.
Right,
he just said.
There's some lines I
like
won't
the
cross.
casino.
No, I don't. The casino is a tax on poor people, is what my father always said. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This idea of ordination, God has ordained this particular institution. It is now morphed into God has ordained this particular type of thought. Okay, this is why you have people who feel like if they support the Black Lives Matter movement, they are somehow running away from the church. They're not able to. They're not supporting God. I actually had a friend who told me point blank, if you vote Democrat, his name was Josh Taylor. He said, if you vote Democrat, you are in sin. In sin, right?
That's not the first time I've heard that.
So it's not the first time you've heard that.
I've heard that from pastors and all types.
And there you go.
They're voting Trump.
There's this idea. I mean, you can talk about politics and all these kinds of things.
Ain't that something?
But there's this idea that conservative thinking is God ordained thinking, and when something gets picked up politically, Black Lives Matter movement is generally the pride and joy right now of more liberal people, and that's fine. It's still right. I don't care who picks it up. It's right. But the idea is, okay, because it's not a conservative ideal, and conservative ideals are God-ordained ideals, we can't support Black Lives Matter movement. So what were you doing that brought this on? Okay, young lady. I had a conversation with a guy a couple weeks ago. I was in California working on my master's degree, and this guy was talking about, what was that lady doing? Why was she walking through an alley by herself? What was she wearing? What brought it on? It's conservative thought. Like, why did she drink so much? What did she expect was going to happen? She expected to be hung over. That's what she expected in the morning.
We kind of lightly touched on it, but that's one thing that we didn't talk about at all. The offshoot of one of the points that was brought up is white kid commits a crime, they print his swim scores.
Right.
Black guy commits a crime, they find a mugshot from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
kid falls into the gorilla enclosure.
It's
find dad who wasn't even in the zoo. His background, like what? Why?
Because in the entire history of America, we've spent a lot of time justifying wrongs against black people. You just talked about it. We were like, oh well, you're born into sin because of Ham, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, the curse of Ham. I had that in my paper. I just didn't talk about it.
That's what I was waiting for.
I have it if we want to talk about that too. Do you guys know what the curse of Ham is? Okay, just to give some context.
I thought it was
like sandwiches?
Is it
No. So Noah had three sons: Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Okay, and all three of their names mean different color skin tones. Okay, and Ham meant dark-skinned. Okay, so the idea was that Ham uncovered his father's nakedness, and there's ideas about what uncovered nakedness means. It could mean one of two things. He actually took a sheet off of his father and exposed his father's nakedness while he was drunk, which was embarrassing culturally for his father. Or it means that he went in while his dad was sleeping and he had sex with him.
Noah wasn't packed.
That was the other idea. There are two different meanings. No one has the exact story on Noah except for Darren Aronofsky. I think he got it spot on. The rock monsters. Nobody's getting the terrible movie. Do not watch the Noah movie.
You mean sci-fi rock monsters?
The Russell Crowe movie. I was like, what in the world is going? The story's already incredulous.
Sci-fi.
Come on now.
You don't need to
add all this. But either way, Ham. When Noah woke up, saw what had happened, he cursed his son Ham and said that Ham's descendants would forever be slaves and servants of his brothers Shem and Japheth.
So there you go.
Well, Shem and Japheth is where you get light-skinned people from. And Ham, dark people. So you have the idea of the curse of Ham. This is why black people are enslaved. That's folklore, religious folklore, but folklore nonetheless. So continue.
So reason number one why we decided that they deserve it. We've also decided that people are less than. Black people are 3/5 of a man. This conditioning, like I said, is working on everyone at the same time because it's broad brush advertising. Mm-hmm. And so everyone is getting it. And so when you see this thing that happens when a black person dies, they always immediately go look for the why. Not the why did they die, but the why did they deserve it. Every single time.
I mean, even
what
the
did they do to
psychology
quote unquote
test,
have it coming?
Why did they have it coming?
Even the classic psychology test of the little black girls choosing the black doll over the white
you mentioned
doll.
that a little bit earlier, right?
But even the black kids, even the black kids were picking the white dolls because they didn't say what doll do you want. They said what doll is beautiful.
Which one's good? Which one's beautiful?
Good and bad, yeah.
And they said which one is the one. And then the one test where you could choose, they had like a scale of different colors. And they said which kid in your class is bad and which kid in your class is good. And the kids started to pick the lighter kids to say they're good. Because what's happening is that they're being conditioned not by the kids actually acting up, but because the teachers dote on the kids that are lighter. They assume they're good, and so when the darker skinned kids do things at the same rate, they are in trouble as much.
Wasn't that the American Red Cross pool poster that said, the good kids, bad kids?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And all the good kids were like, and all the bad kids were kicking kids in the pool where the black kids.
It's socially ingrained. People aren't doing these things. People aren't making decisions because they are overtly racist all the time. But that's why I keep saying, everyone is racist. The only way to solve the problem, people
That's
always
why
say,
I brought up the historical stuff. It's like you're being affected by ideas. You're holding two ideas that have historical precedent. Okay, you didn't just wake up and think that. This is something you inherited, and you don't even realize it. And that's part of the issue why I think this conversation keeps stopping. I did a podcast when Ferguson happened where I just said, every time we get to this point, the conversation stops. It stops just shy of people going, yeah, there is a problem.
Well, I think if you look at culturally too, the White Knight, right, going back to King Arthur times, right, Darth Vader. I think the only bad guy wearing white was Saruman in Lord of the Rings. I mean, if you look at every other one, is the Lone Ranger, right, all of it, right, the good guy
historically, and then when you also think about just the ideas. So, these things are prevalent. I would say, I guess just moving forward, like I say, it's even good to have, and it's healthy to have these discussions, but it's ingrained in us too. I've had these debates with my friends. So much that it's ingrained in us. I mean, we have prejudice that does exist. We prejudge any situation based on a myriad of factors, but race plays a role in a whole lot of these decisions that we do decide to make. And the sad fact, and there are, I guess you say, some black privileges. Me being a black man, people think I'm packing, and what else? What else is a black privilege? I think people think
you're good at bass.
We're great at dancing.
We
We've got
dance.
We can. I don't know.
You can play a mean bass guitar.
Cook something.
That's right. Go in your dad's basement. There's a bass guitar.
Yeah. Token on that episode of
South Park.
South Park is like,
damn it, Token, you can play bass. Just play it.
But if you notice, none of our stereotypes have anything to do with leadership.
No.
What we do is we amuse. We are the masters of amusement. We are. What we do is we play basketball.
Bamboozled.
We jump over things.
Shuck and jive.
That was the idea. So back to more of this conditioning. What we are, like Jesse Williams said, is that we're magic, right? We exist outside the realm of humanity. And so people like LeBron James and Steph Curry are magic. We love them because they're extra. But think about how let me tell you when that idea gets dangerous. I always bring this up because the story of Mike Brown getting shot is so preposterous to me. When the story about Mike Brown is, and these are things that we know about the situation, right? The officer, what's his name, Darren Wilson?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Darren Wilson said that Mike Brown walks up to a police car, punches him through the window. First of all.
All right, first off, it was some bullshit.
But hold on.
Period.
But let's go.
That was some straight up bullshit.
I'm going to break it down to you guys. I'm going to break it down to you guys in the way that is actually was recounted so people can understand how absurd this is. And this is why it's dangerous to think that black people are magic. So he said that Mike Brown punched him in the face, held the door closed. Right? He said that this young kid was stronger than him, even though they were the same size. Then he said that when he finally got away, he pulled a gun on Mike Brown. He aimed at him with the gun. He shot at him. Mike Brown turns around, runs towards him at full speed, takes a couple of bullets to the body. Right?
Wasn't he like 6'6", 330? I mean, he was regardless.
No, check it out.
Okay.
Mike Brown and Darren Wilson were the exact same height. See, this is what people don't know. But see, in our mind's eye, we pictured this black person as bigger than this white person.
True story.
Because black people are magic. We understand that they see this.
I got a buddy Craig who gets mad at me because I'm going to the gym right now. My wife and I are working out at the gym all the time, and maybe there's something to this. Like there's some genetic memory. It's a holdover from slave days, interestingly enough.
I agree.
He's like, I hate going to the gym and working out with black people, and I was like, that's super racist. But I'm going to wait for the rest of your sentence. and he goes, I go in there and I work out for months and I get fat. A black guy goes in there, picks up a 5-pound weight, and he's got like 3 muscles on top of muscles. What's happening here? I'm like, well, I don't know.
Sean T.
I mean, there are indeed genetic things. But there was another study that came out. They sampled doctors. Doctors believed that black people experienced less pain when they were cut and or prodded.
Sure.
The American understanding of black America.
I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard.
No, I'm not saying I don't believe you.
That's why it's so crazy.
I've heard a couple studies of that.
What is
because you can tell me something, and I can believe you. It's a new thing for black people.
That's a cool thing about one of my favorite new books, Black Stats. It's like so many stats
I need to see this. I need to take a picture of this book cover.
That looks super dope.
It's medical. It's judicial. It's education based. It's so many. Like I've thumbed through it, but I mean, so many things. And I mean, as you're talking about the Mike Brown thing, it's like, come on, dude, you're gonna let somebody just walk up on you and put a goddamn hand in your.
That's why it's dangerous. That's why it's dangerous. Because it sounds good when it becomes a positive bias. Oh, yeah, LeBron James is going to be great. Black people are super strong. We're good at music. We can also take 65 shots to the chest. We can also tear your car door off your thing. We're not just sleeping with your wives. We're just snatching them right out of the house, and we're just giving them super dick. It's like calm.
Super dick.
It's like calm down.
Sounds like
and that's the thing.
It's like, you're not magic.
I tell people about that all the time. Long before Jesse Williams spoke, I think a lot of people have said a lot of the same things that Jesse Williams has said, but because there's I think you posted on your Facebook because he's lighter, people take it from him. But I think that regardless, it's the truth. I've told people the problem with stereotypes is when you accept good ones, it gives you the freedom to believe bad ones.
Facts.
It's like, hey, you know what? All Asian people are great at math. They're just great at math. Asian people cannot drive cars at all. They just can't do it. You know what? Black people, they're just so fast. Usain Bolt is just so fast.
Fast enough to run away from the police.
Yeah, black people are all criminals. Man, Hispanics such hard workers. Hispanics, they just keep stealing all our jobs because they're such hard workers. It's like the other side of the coin, right? And I'm going. That's why I'm always talking.
No, but if you look at Calvin, if you look at even like Trading Places in 86, they are a musical people.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus. That was only not even that long ago, and that shit's already been talked.
The thing is, again, if you accept any type of positive stereotype, the problem is it gives people the freedom to accept negative stereotypes, which is why I have to be very careful when I want to accept. Positive, because I happen to be a good dancer, right? I just happen to be a good dancer.
Yeah, I mean, I would just happen.
You have rhythm?
I do have some rhythm. I do. I can't play drums to save my life, but if you get me out on a dance floor, I'm good, right? So it depends on the context where I have rhythm, right? So I can't keep rhythm, but I can dance to a rhythm, right? So the problem is if someone says, "Oh my God, you're out there dancing so good, man, I wish I was black." If I said, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, I bet you wish you were," that's now giving the people freedom to believe something negative about me, stereotype-wise, if I accept the stereotype as true. For me, personally, I can dance. I know other black people who cannot dance to save their life.
This is a true thing. True story.
Yeah.
But I also in those moments, like I'm at the club, I'm not going to be like, well, actually, I can only dance because I just happen to be able to dance. Gerald over there, who's also black, has no idea how to dance.
But here's the thing,
I'm not going to take a moment to educate you in the club.
I think some things, and we were having this. I was having this conversation literally yesterday about differences and about colorblindness, and why colorblindness is the biggest sham in the history of shams.
Let's talk about that for a moment.
I hate the idea of colorblindness. And the reason why is because what it does is it negates and erases thousands of years of history for many people. It only positively helps one group of people for people to be colorblind, and that is white people. Let me tell you why. Because to say, oh yeah, all this music came from all of us together is to negate black contributions to art, music, jazz, R&B, hip-hop, blah, blah. And then we try to start at ground zero. That means we're trying to reset and say, oh, everything is equal now. And all things given equality, we can build this together. Unfortunately, everything is not equal. And people have not been given the credence to own what they've created.
I would say this. On top of that, but what I led with, as much as color plays a role in prejudice, also, interest and likability plays a role in factors. So it's certain things like with Bob and Dave, because my interest in tech and what I'm doing and different things I plan on doing with my business, I'm more in step with them than some of my homeboys I grew up with my whole life. So, I think it's so many different variations that make up the scope of who we are as human beings.
But I think we should. I'm not saying that
that play a role.
I'm not saying that we need to say that anything is different. I think we need to come to this place where we understand that differences can be equally unique and equally good. And what's happening is that people are so afraid of saying things are different, they're trying to homogenize everybody and saying that we don't have unique and special things.
All right, now
because we are all different. And it's, for growing up, one of the things, I'm from Midland. Do you guys all know where that is, Midland, Michigan?
It's like the middle. Is it at the middle?
When I delivered, I used to be, and this was one of the best things racially for me. I was for about 2.5 years because I was saving for some music ventures I was doing. I was a truck driver, and I was basically driving all around the state of Michigan, which Michigan is an extremely white state. And I'm happy that I got that perspective because you really don't know poverty. Rural poverty is a whole nother difference than hood poverty, because at least the guy in the hood has aspirations on being Nino Brown. To me, the guy that says, hey, man, I just want to work at Walmart. And it's like, damn, dude, that's seriously what you want to do? It's a whole different level of poverty.
All right, so let me bring it back.
I've been to Midland.
So the idea behind that is, growing up, a lot of what I heard was, well, I don't really see color. I don't really see you as black, or you're one of the good ones. And I'm like, wait a second. It wasn't until I was older that I started telling my friends, you know what, that's not okay, that you don't see me as black, because what you're saying really is that you don't see me. You don't see me. You don't see the historical issues. You don't understand the differences between the two of us, which can be dangerous to me depending on what's happening around
what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Right.
Because they're going to say to you, because what happens when people strip color out of it and they strip the history out of it, then they say things like, oh, well, how come you didn't just magically get a job in the same place I got a job in? Well, because you didn't see color doesn't mean the guy who was hiring people didn't see color. But now you've taken it upon yourself to judge a situation because you, quote unquote, didn't see the color involved.
Sure, it's the same reasons why someone having a name like Lakeisha would change their name to Lynn because they wouldn't get phone calls on their resume. Right? I mean,
that's a proven stat, by the way. That's insane. It's insane.
Right? So the more white your name sounds, or the more homogenous your name is, the more likely it is that you're going to get a call.
My name is Eric Thomas, specifically for that reason. My mom said she named me Eric Thomas so that when they see my name on the resume, they would give me a call. Now, I was stupid and started my own business, so I wasted Eric Thomas that a Devontae could have had, but,
Well, they know I'm black.
They do, Carter.
They definitely do.
They definitely know. But that's why you have to see color. That's why you have to appreciate the unique differences. When you look at somebody with an afro and you look at somebody's hair, genetically that is different. And what happens is that what was it? Like they gave Kim Kardashian and them credit for like box braids and all that kind of stuff, UFC fighters. And it was like, you don't get to just say that you created this thing that we've been doing culturally. The only people that helps are the people with the means and resources to take culture.
It's like Cornetta Lane of Core City Stories talked about people moving into Core City, where there are people who still live there, and these people moved in with money and means, and they just renamed the whole place. Right, they're like, you can't just come in here and just rename where people still live. Like if nobody lived here, if it was like Brush Park and nobody lived there anymore, okay, come in, rebrand, whatever.
East Detroit.
The people live here.
And that is the frustration with me in this idea of colorblindness, this idea of we're all the same. The fact is, as such, we are not. But men and women are not the same. No. They go through different challenges. They have different struggles. They have different genetic builds. Black people in America, and they are doing studies on it right now to show that black Americans have trauma in their genetic code from all the shit that has happened to us from slavery and on forth. You cannot just say you're living the same experience as us if you haven't been through slavery.
But let's put this.
But people would argue that we haven't been through slavery.
Though.
So you're saying genetic memory.
Genetic memory.
Kari, let me talk real quick. So I said earlier, my parents are refugees. My grandparents are refugees. I'm first generation. I was born here. Okay. And I checked
refugees from
Germany.
Okay.
So they were actually born in Yugoslavia because they tried to get away from the war. Okay. And then they tried to get back in. They said no. Gun to the head, and here's
talking
$40.
about World War II.
Yes.
Okay.
Gun to the head. Here's $40. You leave.
Okay.
But here's the difference. When they get here, I check the box white. Right. They moved into a Jewish neighborhood in Chicago, and that's the difference. Is my parents barely spoke German when they got here, and I
barely spoke
none.
German or English.
German. Like they got here and you're American. Boom. My grandparents were like, you don't even say that you're. I'm surprised.
So they started speaking English even though they knew German.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm surprised they never even changed
the same
name.
way. My great grandmother, the family came over in 1902, Italy. My great grandmother would kick her kids' ass if they spoke Italian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're American.
But the difference is, the difference of this whole thing is, and getting on Eric's point is, they didn't look at my grandfather from across the street and go, "That guy's a German immigrant."
Trust that guy
he's not a German immigrant. He was just that guy.
At the same time, this is the choice that, like I say, a lot of the Europeans, because I mean, it's not like I think a lot of the European descendants from those nations wanted to abandon the nationality in their culture. It's just that they knew it was safer, because if they embraced Italian and Germanic culture, especially at the time, you'd face certain atrocities that you wouldn't want to face. But we as black people don't have the option and the luxury of doing that the same way. So, like, I mean, when the number one thing is when we talk about black, white, like I say, it's so many other nations that have assimilated to whiteness. Like right now, you have a lot of Eastern Europeans that are leaving what's happened to be, I guess, what at one point was the USSR, and assimilating to whiteness, but in reality, they're whatever form of Russian at one point in time.
And you come here and you click the white box in the census form, and you're blinded from it. You're shot.
Arab Americans are being checked as white.
The thing about whiteness, and this is how
there's no checkbox for it.
You were saying, I left the room for a minute. I needed a little break, but the idea of the whole colorblindness thing, going back to the whiteness, the privilege that comes with it. So we can just jump into the whole privilege thing. The interesting thing, the way that affects me. Okay, so I'm black. Both my parents are black, so that's why I'm black. But,
makes sense.
But I don't have the quintessential African American experience, the stereotypical. Here's what we believe black experience is. Because my dad was, he had that experience, and he said, never for my kids. He went to the Naval Academy. Okay, graduated from the Naval Academy, went into the United States military, served in the military for 16 years. He is still married to my mom. They've been married for 38, almost 40 years at this point. Same woman, faithful to her. Again, not the quintessential story. The quintessential black story is single mom raising 18 kids by different dads. That's the story that people have in their heads, right? It's not true, but it's the story that people have, right? So here's this idea of what it means to be white and what it means to be black. I have the story that most people would assume is a story for white people. My mother's also an educator, So she spoke English, and she wouldn't let us. She always said it as a joke, but she wouldn't let us speak Ghettonese in the house because she knew if I wanted to get a good job, if I wanted to get ahead in life, I needed when I kind of joke, I was like, I needed to, when I get on the phone to talk to people, I needed them to mistake me for a white person. I needed that to happen. I didn't think that as a kid. It's like, I just needed to be educated to get ahead.
Right.
Well, now it works in really bad ways sometimes because I actually do have that confusing name, Calvin. You know, if it's on a resume, you could go 50-50, right?
Right.
You got Calvin Johnson, you got Calvin Coolidge. you got, so you Calvin Hobbes. I always get that joke. Where's Hobbes, right? But
God.
Oh God, growing up with that.
So buying you
growing up was Calvin. It was Calvin Klein growing up. But either way, so I grow up. I become an adult.
Real strong.
As I'm a teenager, I'm wanting to date. I'm going to a predominantly black church, and my mom doesn't want me to really date white people at the time because she's like, I know the hardships that could come with that, right? So I just rather you not have to deal with that. And I'm interested in black women, but I'm, quote, with black people, not black enough. My nickname,
it's a real thing.
My nickname was Big Proper because I spoke proper English. Instead of Big Papa, I was Big Proper. Right? I was Big Proper. Hey, I like it when you call me Big Proper. Look at you talk proper English. So funny, so funny. But then with white people,
so stupid.
With white people, though, I was the whitest black guy they'd ever met.
Sure,
Calvin, you're the whitest black guy. Oh, you're not really black.
Billy has no idea what that's like.
You're not really black.
Well, hold on. So you missed part of the discussion where I talked about I grew up in Midland.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
Thank you. Very nice, lovely place. But, I mean, the struggle there is, again, I remember my dad taking us to Flint because he was preaching in a church, and and I remember black church, but they said, you speak funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well,
why you talk that way?
I don't know how else I'm supposed to speak.
Generally, they say you talk white. That's generally
it depends on where you are, right? So, like, my family's from the South, so when we go to the South in the summer, and my parents would, ship my sister and I down there to spend time with our grandparents to get some culture because growing up in Midland,
you're not going to get that.
There wasn't any.
Right.
My daughter who's biracial lives in Fenton. She's experiencing the same thing.
I understand.
Right now.
So and that was the thing. I was not black enough for black culture, but if I was with my white friends, it was you're not really. I don't really see you as black, or
you're one of the good
you don't
guys.
sound black, or you're right, or you're one of the good guys. And so these are all things that have to be discussed. Is that there's just this lack of understanding all the way around.
Yeah.
And in the struggle that you face even within black culture, right?
Right. The problem I find is the problem I'm finding is when it's on both sides. When black people buy into that, you are buying into a narrative about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, we are this way. This is what our culture looks like. This is what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to talk this way. We're supposed to act this way. We're supposed to be good at this. We're not supposed to be good at this. My niece right now, she is very afraid in her predominantly black school to let other students know that she gets good grades. She's very scared of that. Okay? Now, my parents were like, if you come home with anything less than a B, I'm going to whoop your ass.
Right.
That was it. Right? But my parents had access to things that a lot of the students that she is going to school with in this charter school system don't have access to. And so when she gets called on by the teacher and she has the right answer, typical Mariah would know that. Or, I get straight A's, but I don't want to tell anybody that. And so you have sketches from Key and Peele, in the first season of Key and Peele, where one guy is walking across the street on the phone and he sees another black guy walking across the street, and it's both Key and Peele. And when they see each other, they start really blacking it up, but they both talk like I do in real life. They get past each other. The guy's like, "Oh my God, honey, you're not going to believe what just happened to me." And so it's like this idea that we have to.
By the way, I love that you all have your different white guy voice.
Right.
Like that
was my impression of Key and Peele.
Well, if it makes you feel better, most of our white guy voices are just our actual voices. And that's
they heighten up a little bit.
No. We get whinier.
Did you get any black people on your podcast? As a person,
why is this
Dave,
all
let's start
white
talking.
people?
Hold on, though. I'm pretty sure that you need to take a picture just
to prove,
just so that there's clarification. That
No, me and Dave will start talking like the two jive guys from Airplane, and then it'll all even itself out.
But in reality, though,
no,
I mean,
I'm just going to.
He's actually taking the picture to prove it.
So, I mean, but like with you guys' story, like, I mean, because talk about it, you know, even with the way that I grew up, and even the way that. I mean, kids are cruel, man. We talked about people for any goddamn.
Yep,
you know, we talk about
they can.
If you had girlfriends, if you didn't have girlfriends, if you spoke well, if you didn't speak well, if you were poor, if you were rich. When we were in middle school, nothing was off limits. So, I mean, we would rag on people for everything. It was just one of those things of all our insecurities. It's like, it's time to talk about Jesse today.
Yeah.
The only person we didn't talk about was, you know, the girl that everybody liked. You know, generally with a lot of features that was black that probably assimilated to closer to what European ideals of attractiveness. Or she had like some big ass titties. Looked like, but.
I don't. But where are we going with this?
You know what I'm saying is like what I'm saying is like
right up until you.
From that
at that point you're confused about your body, so you're pointing out what she's got. Right?
From this, I'm just trying to say like we dealt with so much of. We dealt with like so much of like, I mean, it's so many different stories in the black experience.
That's
because
right.
what we
It's not
assimilate
monolithic.
to being black, it's not monolithic. It's so diverse. Especially like I always say, New York is a great place to go when you think as if you understand the black experience. Go to New York for a summer and you'll say to yourself, damn, I thought I knew where black people were coming from. But I have no goddamn idea.
But here's the problem.
You know?
This is once again why it frustrates me that no one wants to admit that they racist as hell.
Yep.
Because what happens is that we do know what white people sound like. That's why we have the white people voice. We do know that black fathers are not around. We know that in our gut. We know that without questioning. I've been thinking about this a lot because we've been talking about it a lot. How do you solve this problem? This is what I think. This is what I think the answer to this is.
When you say we know that black fathers aren't around, is that like an idea?
That's an idea.
Fact?
It's not true, but we know it, right?
It's
that's
an
the
idea
problem.
that we believe.
It is in certain contexts true.
But here's
but
the
it's
thing.
not.
But people
overarching.
But it's what we believe.
Right.
But people,
it's not overarchingly true.
In marketing, perception is reality. The things that we perceive are the things that are. Whether there's a monster on the other side of the door or not, your heart rate quickens, right? Whether the police officer is going to shoot you or not, we know that he could. My heart rate quickens. Whether that black man is going to tear me out of my car and beat me to death or not, I know that is true, and so I physiologically react to that. Mm-hmm. The only thing we can do to solve this problem right now is check our reactions. We need to feel a thing and then immediately question why. Because what's happening is that we see a person and then we go, I think that person is going to hurt me. And you never think about why you thought that. You just move to the other side of the street. You need to go, whoa, where did I learn that black person was going to hurt me when I've never talked to a black person before? That is the question you got to ask yourself. Why do I think when I go into a room full of white people that they're judging me and I have to immediately show how smart I am?
Yep. You have to be twice as smart.
You have to be twice as smart. I have to really rapidly establish my authority and simultaneously, because I got just issues, because this is America, I also very rapidly establish my blackness, right? So I used to wear braids all the time. I still speak with like a weird concoction mixture. Like if anybody heard me speak, it's like a mixture of proper English and Ebonics. It's not a straight one. It's not either or.
I only understand half of what you say.
Exactly right. Like it's a weird. It's like a thing.
I keep googling the words.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know what was good.
Urban Dictionary.
Yeah. What do we do before Google? It's like I just don't know what he said.
I don't know. We just don't give him a.
Don't listen to Eric.
But that's the thing. So I'm establishing both of these things because I am expecting you, white person, to feel a type of way about me. Now over time, I have loosened those things because I've met people. I mean, I was in a room today, and this was the analogy made about white people.
When were you in this room?
today.
Okay.
Earlier
Just
today.
clarifying.
The analogy about white people was this one. And this is what you got to understand about what we're all combating against together. If you put your hand in a bag of snakes, every snake will not bite you, but rest assured one will. That the snakes are white people. See, that was the analogy. Now, I'm not saying that's true. It was somebody in my office.
Okay.
And so, and what's happening is that we have been conditioned to believe that white people are so dangerous that they are snakes trying to reap from us. And so when white people with genuinely good intentions do move into the inner city to try to build some things, and you say, how come these black people are giving us opposition? Because we're terrified. Because every time white people showed up on the shore, whoever was on the other side of the shore lost ground.
Now,
every time.
Historically, let me say
this.
Historically, like, because what's so weird, if you meet my great uncle, and it's so, he went to Tuskegee. He was actually one of the students of George Washington Carver. He's the most, if he meets anybody white, he'll be very polite, but then as soon as we walk away, it's like, hey, watch him. You know, and I think that the white guy his age would feel the same way about the black guy. So this is what's so strange. But in reality, I mean, we gotta. Sometimes you have to judge a certain situation, and I'm happy I've had so many different business situations. You just got to interact with people.
I want to believe you, but you don't trust any blue people. You see what I'm saying? Because you're
on duty.
But
hell no.
But here are my experiences
off duty. I think on duty blue. And me being black, you're right. I have an extreme bias. But as far as like sometimes a white guy,
but our problem is with their bias.
If this is a white dude,
our problem is with both of our.
It's my bias too.
We've shared a story.
It's my bias too.
We've shared a story that we can't trust each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And there has to be understanding on both sides.
And so,
I'm not trying to listen. And I'm black. If I have a son or a daughter, hopefully they'll open up to that blue non-bias.
He's not even like, can we all get along?
I'm black. But I can look at a white guy and say, if it doesn't go my way in whatever exchange, I can say, okay, maybe he's just an asshole naturally. He may not necessarily be racist. But white guy could be an asshole.
My problem aren't what we think on the surface. My problem isn't what we're thinking on the surface. My problem is our physiological reactions to other folks. Because we don't think about those. We just don't. We just move to the other side of the street. It happens every day.
But you got to interact more to even change that.
Well, I'm not talking about change. I'm talking about the way to change it at first is to question why you did that. Because you're not recognizing it.
But people don't know what they've inherited. And that's why I want to do the history thing. It's like, you don't even realize you've inherited this view. Once you realize that you've inherited the view, then you can move forward. You cannot move forward without an understanding of history. This is why I do the tours that I do in the city of Detroit. It's like, oh, why has Detroit got so many burned out houses? Well, the Home Rule Act of 1909. Let's go into that. That's how you understand how we had so many houses go belly up in 2008. That's why we had so many foreclosures. You have no perspective on today.
You also had, and a lot of people don't want to point this out, you also had a lot of white people that own those properties during the whole quote-unquote Devil's Night fear. It's like, do I want to keep paying for this property that my dad owned, or do I want to just burn this shit down and make some insurance money? A lot of that shit went on.
All right, fair enough. That was a smaller percentage than the vast majority of things that happened.
I think I have a larger percentage than a lot of people think.
I have a story.
Personally, I see that shit happening. And if you create something like, you look at the percentages of most of those homes.
But I don't want to make that the overarching story of how we got there. Okay, if we have 100 some odd years before Devil's Night even becomes a thing.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's where
we're working on the 67 project, which is about the 50 years before, during, after, moving forward. It's about all of those things. I want to talk to you about that.
Okay.
Anyways.
Let me tell you guys. I have a story that I think is relevant here as we're talking about.
I got a story too.
The
I've been waiting to say it. So
the importance of understanding. Well, so several years ago, I'm looking to buy a business with my business partner. We're looking to diversify a little bit. And so I did all of the legwork. I made the phone calls. I reached out to the business owner, set up the meeting. And so we drive to this manufacturing company that we're looking to just do some due diligence on. And we're sitting in the lobby, and my business partner happened to be white. So we're sitting there, and I'm like, you know what? I just realized when the owner comes out, he's not going to realize that he spoke with me on the phone. He's going to walk up to you and say, hey, Billy, it's really nice to meet you. He's like, no way. That's just impossible.
Absolutely going to happen.
And of course, without a doubt, owner comes out, looks at me, looks at my business partner, walks directly over to him, and he's like, Billy Strutter, it's such a pleasure to meet you. And he said it took everything he could to not be angry and upset. And it was eye-opening for him, but he now understood that he needed to look at the world differently.
That happened to me. My wife and I, again, I run 7.2 tours. I'm giving tours in the city of Detroit. We need to, right now, it's a new business, so when I do private tours, the checks are just made out to Calvin Moore. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem legitimate when you send a contract out. Like, it needs to be made out to 7.2 Tours LLC, right? Well, I need to have a bank account to do that. So we went to go to a credit union that I won't mention because we're actually they've resolved the issue. Okay, I'm still going to go and probably open the account with them. But we went in, and the person came out and spoke to her. We're there to open a business account. We both own this business. My wife is sitting right next to me right now. She wants to chime in on a few things. We'll let her chime in in a sec. I love you, honey. But the young lady only really talked to Jen. Only talked to her. And at the end, and then we got denied. We got denied for it. And Jen was like, I've never been denied for anything. I don't know why you were the only one person who got talked to. I had no point of reference for that, and I was just like, this is par for the course.
Welcome to life.
They automatically, again, I'm the primary owner of the company. I'm the guy who does all predominance of the work. We have both of our names on it for legal reasons, but I'm the guy who's basically running it all. She's a realtor. That's basically her 24/7 job, and they didn't say more than maybe 5 words to me in the whole situation. And I ended up putting it on Facebook, and the credit union saw that, and the vice president of the company ended up calling me and saying, hey, we don't want this to be an issue. And I said, it could just be, it's like, I'm one of those guys who, like, I understand things affect people in ways they don't understand, but I'm willing to say that this was just bad customer service. Because a lot of people want to go out and run and say the race car, it's happened to me because I'm black. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, could have.
Go leave 1-star reviews.
Right. But the fact of the matter is, if it was a white person going in and that happened, they'd be like, this is really bad customer service. They talked to them and not to me. What's going on here? So I'll give it I'll say it was bad customer service. But in the future, you're not going to have someone as understanding as me. You're going to have someone who's going to make it a nightmare for your company. So you can talk to her more about cultural sensitivity and take care of it. I don't want her to be in trouble. But this is a learning moment for you as a company. I've worked in a lot of good retail that's trained me how to, approach these kind of situations. But either way, kind of the same thing. The guy comes out, sees you, sees your business partner, immediately thinks it's your business partner. Comes out, sees Jen, immediately thinks that she's the person who has, majority ownership in this company, which is just kind of an interesting.
I have a similar story that was.
Well, let me ask you a question though. So I mean, dumb guy question. Mm-hmm. Could that not have been as simple as a lot of people set themselves up as a woman-owned corporation for tax purposes, that sort of thing?
No, I mean at this point, this person has no information. No information other than the fact that we want to open a business account.
Oh, well then, yeah.
See, that's that implicit bias. Right, like I had a situation where I was on a robotics team, right? Because I'm clearly a nerd, right? So I was
seems about right.
Right?
Was it a police robot that blows black people up?
No, that's what I was working on.
Okay,
so success.
Hashtag Michael Jordan,
it's Johnny Six.
So we were on we were on Ford Motor Company property at
compliance.
Night. And this is one of my first experiences, which is kind of overt, like bias. In like facing it, because I was young. I might have been about 16 years old. We're on Ford property, and this guy this white kid standing next to me, and we're friends. We're on a robotics team, and this kid, I BS you not, this is not a joke at all. This kid was standing there in a black trench coat full of tools, because he works on stuff. I design things. I was doing CAD, and his family was sitting in a car, right off to the side, kind of like in the darkness, and they were waiting, and I was waiting on my sister to come pick me up, and so. This older white guy comes by on a police cart, like a little security cart, and he stops the cart, he pops the hood, the little glove box, and he hops out, shines a light at me. And he said, "What you doing here, boy?"
Did he use the word boy?
He literally used the word boy. It's hard to forget when somebody calls you boy.
This is true.
If you don't understand, boy is a negative racial connotation when a white person speaks to
because they call you a boy
in
whether you're
a white person
when you're
11
11
and we get called boy. It's
if you're 11 or you're 98, they're going to call you boy.
That's a holdover from slave days.
Yes. So
you are not a man. That's what that meant.
That means you're not a man. So he says, "What you doing here, boy?" And so immediately, this is a true story. Physical reaction. I put my hands up. This is a security guard. Immediate reaction. Hands up.
Smart man.
Right? Like it don't work all the time, as we know. But I put my hands up. I look at the kid next to me. The kid has his hands in his pockets in his trench coat, looking around. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. The guy never broke my gaze, never looked at the kid. Why are you here? Well, I'm here for the robotics club. You know, I go to Henry Ford Academy. We do robotics. We're right here in the shed. This is what we do. We have this own, our mentors for robotics are from Ford Motor Company. Like, we had too much funding, right? We had too much funding. We used to help inner city schools with supplies, like the maximum funding. This dude goes back to his car, like lowers the little glove box. We got to get ready reaching it. I don't know what he had in that box, right? I was like, I'm waiting for my sister. I'm here with my friend. The kid's family had to get out of the car and vouch for me being on the property. Not him being on the property, me being on the property. We were the same age, went to the same school. He had on a black trench coat. I've been dressing like this with suits since 2004.
I can vouch for that because I've known Eric since he was in high school.
Bro.
He's always been professional.
I've got video of it that most people probably won't believe.
Actually, he's always kept a portfolio on him since then, too.
And I had a giant computer and everything. So when I tell you I looked like a stereotypical kid going to school, doing stuff, literally, he was like, what are you doing here? And it took this kid's entire mom, dad, and sister and him to vouch for me being where he was standing on the property for that man to leave me alone. It was one of the most frustrating experiences I ever remember, because I remember hands up looking back and forth from my friend to the guy, from my friend to the guy, from the friend to the guy, trying to figure out why he never looked at this kid. And it took me a little while to process that there was a slight difference between me and this kid, because he looked like a stereotypical school shooter. Right. Like, I'm telling you, long black trench coat,
he looked like a Columbine
middle
shooter.
of the night,
right.
Pocket full of tools, could have actually done damage.
But this is the conversation that we need to have, that until my friends that I grew up with in Midland, who are all white, understand what that feels like, until there's that understanding and empathy, it's, well, I'm respectful when I get pulled over the police. Why aren't you just respectful? And I'm like, wait, no, I am respectful.
Well, no, because I'm going to go back 2 hours. Because when Kari was telling one of his earlier stories, guys, I've been pulled over a fair share in my life. I have never had a cop address me through a PA system, had me put my hands up on the roof, I've never had that.
I was pulled over a half a dozen times saying I have a CPL. How would you like me to proceed? It was business as usual, right? Same thing.
It's terrible. My business partner has a gun. You guys met Marcus. He has a gun. And we had this conversation. And, after Philando Castile was shot, this conversation went from being funny to real life. But it was, do I carry my gun?
Right.
And it stopped being like, ha, you black, don't carry your gun, to, yo, you black, don't carry your gun. Because,
it's the same thing as going back to, you look at the movie Selma, right?
Oh, my God.
You can go in, Oprah Winfrey's character at the beginning of the movie, she's going in, she has the right to vote. She has the right to vote. We had the right to vote for a long time, but they put all these things in the way, roadblocks in the way, to make sure that you couldn't actually, use that
exercise,
right to vote. Right? You couldn't exercise your right to vote. Thank you for the word. Same thing here. It's like you have the right, the Second Amendment right that everybody keeps fighting for after every mass shooting we have. But that's a whole other conversation. Right. You have the right to bear arms to defend yourself.
I feel like we need to start a new podcast with Calvin that's just called A Whole Nother Conversation.
Or per se.
A whole nother conversation.
You want to have me, you absolutely can. I could go on. I got some people. But you've got this whole conversation going on about gun control and, hey, we need to have our weapons and blah blah blah. But then when a black person has a weapon, tells an officer of the law, "Hey, I'm licensed to carry," and they get shot.
Crickets from the NRA.
Yeah, it's crickets.
Crickets.
The NRA. People were like, the NRA has been silent. The NRA has been silent.
But even after 2 or 3 days, they were like, well, the investigation's going on. We'll comment when it's appropriate.
They finally released a statement
NRA?
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, they released it about the cops.
That's what I mean.
Shot.
They commented about the cops.
And then
the sidebar was when they said specifically about him. They said, "Yeah, the investigation is still ongoing, so it's not appropriate for us to comment at this time."
Let me ask you this: as I say, big disparity. Did they comment about that whole Oregon thing?
Are you talking about the militants that were
they took over the state park? They took over the state park.
I called them terrorists immediately. I wrote an entire blog called "Why the Oregon Terrorists Should Be Called Terrorists."
Hey, what happens if?
But did they
group of black
comment on
people
that,
go do
though?
that?
You're talking about a group of black people gather up guns, take a federal property,
Yes.
and get together and then beg for supplies from people?
Yes.
Oh, that was my favorite part of it.
They sent a robot bomb in.
Okay.
They wanted to overthrow the federal government, but they wanted everybody to mail them supplies through the U.S. mail.
Here's the thing.
That was my favorite part.
All right. If we're going to do
Cognitive
this,
dissonance.
we do need to have some historical perspective. Okay. Yeah. They were definitely terrorists, but we need to understand that this, again, and this is where people are going to hate me for saying this, is because I have the background in history, I can say that there are situations where this happens where white people are involved and they get attacked by the government and they get killed. Okay, David Koresh. Dude was crazy. They went into Waco.
Yep.
And they basically killed everybody over there, right? Okay, so these things do happen, but so I want us to be on. There's no but there. I want us to be honest when we're talking about these things. Right now, we are talking about Black Lives Matter and black people getting a shot unarmed. They were armed. They were talking about attacking the government. Things
Heavily.
It's a different situation.
bunch of them.
But I don't want us to pretend like the government has never gone in and killed a bunch of white people, because they have. They absolutely have. But when we're talking about unarmed people,
I'm just talking
it's a
about
whole
race
different
of people.
situation. Like, why do unarmed people get caught up on this is not a race thing. It's not a race thing. It's like, okay, fine. Let's just take race off the table. Police are killing unarmed civilians.
Yeah,
Unarmed civilians.
680 so far this year.
Leads back to the point of rubber bullets, tasers.
I don't think you can take race off the table because, once again, people are perceiving black people as scary.
No, I'm saying even if you did.
But
I'm
even
saying
if you- yeah.
you can't.
Like-
but theoretically, if you did, you still have police. This is happening. This is still happening whether you say it's white or black. It's happening. We happen to be focusing on black lives because black lives seem to be ending at a more alarming rate than that of white lives.
Well, but Calvin, and this is one of the things I really wanted us to get into.
Here's those numbers, right?
There's this Washington Post study that keeps getting linked to.
Well, consider the source. But
but it's Washington. Well, but it's Washington Post, which most people would say is as liberal. Well, and as liberal as you can get.
They're pretty liberal.
So the numbers that they throw out there say that, well, it's, white people are getting killed by police 2x, or any minority, white people at least 2x.
So there's two stats I want to assault right now.
Good, because I was gonna.
So let's assault both of the stats. The first one is that more white people are being killed. There are more white people. That's one. But if we're at damn near 50, so if you're saying that 400 white people were killed and 200 black people were killed, but black people are only 13% of the population, we are drastically outside of the margin of error.
If you look at most murder stats for countries, they use it deaths per 100,000, right?
Yeah.
They don't take into account anything else but deaths per 100,000. So
we're drastically out of bounds with those numbers.
And that's where you get it. That's where people respond with, well, yeah, black people are still, you're a small part of the population, but you are committing all these crimes. Well, again, you decriminalize the same crimes by white people, so it seems like we're committing more, but we're actually committing the same amount, if not less.
We're being targeted in such a way that we get these records, and those records are being used to justify dispatching us. And that is beyond frustrating and beyond the pale of reality and sanity. That you could say to someone, hey, he got put over 30 times, that's why we killed him. Wait a second. Wait, what?
Because that's the latest justification that's getting thrown around is the pullover record.
He was pulled over. Or they said Alton Sterling had all of these convictions, as if those police had record vision, where they could see a black person, see what their criminal record is.
They had their little Terminator glasses on.
Yeah. It's not true.
Or the they live glasses.
You can't if you shoot me and kill me, and then find out later I did bad things. You still weren't justified in killing me because you didn't know I did bad things.
Right, in that moment, you don't know that.
You didn't know. They said, he was
you just
a
got
violent
lucky.
offender.
And with Alton Sterling, they had the wrong guy anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you had the wrong guy. Well, he had a rap sheet a mile long.
That whole fits the description thing.
Well, you killed the wrong man.
So speaking on those two things, fits the description and the wrong guy, I want to take a minute to talk about Mark Hughes. So Mark Hughes, for a few, hours there, was the most wanted man in America.
Yeah.
Because they put his face up. They put his face up as wanted as being one of the shooters in Dallas, when in reality he was on the street with his brother. As soon as the shootings happened, he was down there as a volunteer. As soon as the shooting started, he immediately took, and he was open carrying an AR-15. Let's be clear,
in an open carry state.
State. So took it off. Went to the nearest contingent of police officers, said, "Here is my weapon. How can I help? How can we help?" And started helping the police officers. Later, his picture starts getting circulated as being one of the shooters when there were obviously people had video of him being there and handing his gun over and being on the street at the time. He gets held for hours and hours and hours where the cops are lying to him point blank, saying, "We have video of you being one of the shooters. We have, we have footage of you firing into the crowd. We had
Which is how they elicit false confessions from a lot of people.
And then they finally let him go, and the one thing he asked was, "All right, so in these, are you now going to go out and clear my name with the same fervor that you went after it?"
Crickets.
Not at all.
In all of the press conferences the Dallas police have had since that night, have you heard the name Mark Hughes?
No. And he has death threats. I'm going to share some of these black stats that I got from, and
can't bring books in here and not quote them.
You have this was from the source book of Criminal Justice Statistics 2003. You got only 14% of black Americans have a great deal of confidence in local police officers to treat black and white Americans equally, compared to 38% of whites. Only 44% of black Americans agree that there are situations in which they could approve of a policeman striking a adult male citizen, compared to 71% of white Americans. Other things that just stand out. 26% of black high school seniors report of having a very good attitude about police. And then 67% of black people report that racial profiling is widespread in stops of motorists on the roads, highways. 23% of black people feel that such profiling is justified. 65% of black people report that the racial profiling of shoppers in malls or stores is widespread. But only 19% of black people feel that this is justified. 67% of black Americans report that there is police brutality practiced in areas where they live, compared to 25% of white Americans. So like some of these stats that you just talk about that are reported, it's just like so common. As I can talk about, like, generally anytime I speak to a group of any group of like black men, especially, I say, how many of you guys have been arrested before? The hands that go up, it's like, damn. That same
I'm one of the only people I know
people
who has never been arrested.
I've never been arrested, thankfully.
But I'm rare. I mean, it's like...
Yeah, you're an exception to the rule.
I'm an exception to the rule for sure.
I mean, I'm an
not
exception
being
to the rule.
arrested.
I've never been arrested as well.
Then you start asking, why have you
Two
been
white guys
arrested?
here got arrested.
And
No one
then
else has.
the whole... and then
Criminals.
the reasoning
All white people are
behind
criminals.
I got arrested for murder and they just let me go. I don't know.
I was covered in blood.
I should be in prison. I am Dexter.
All right, well, hey, I'll tell you what. We are at the 2.5 hour mark. Let's take 5. No. I want to let this go because we're just getting into what I thought we were going to hit an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the police.
Now we're talking. Now we're getting.
Let's do
I think we're at a good spot where we can take a break and hop, and then we'll come back and we'll hop into current events, current news, where we are, and where we go from here. Guys, again, thank you so much for coming out. This has been amazing thus far. So looking forward to the next segment. Let's go ahead and grab another drink, hit the bathroom, do what we need to do.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Brittany Daniel from The Game, and you're listening to IT and the D Show.
This is a previously recorded episode of the IT and the D Show.
IT in the D. Networking Detroit, one beer at a time.
ITintheD.com